Today I'm going to talk about how I shot for an entire semi-professional soccer team in the studio for media day. How's it going, guys? Welcome to this video. So last week I had the opportunity to shoot for a semi-professional soccer team in the studio. For those of you who don't know, which is probably going to be most of you, I actually am the founder and work for a marketing company here in Miami. We're like more of a creative agency, and I'm kind of like the head photographer and videographer for this company and for all of our clients. So one of our clients, we were kind of waiting for the season to start, but they're still one of our clients, is a semi-professional soccer team based in Miami Beach Club de Football. And even though the season hasn't started yet, they do have most of their roster filled out. So we ended up having a media day. And so the purpose of this media day was really for us as a marketing team to have assets and photos and videos that we can use for future projects, especially when the season starts. Now we pretty much just took portraits of the entire roster in the studio, where we can essentially use that for graphics, whether they're scoring goals, birthday graphics, announcements, whatever it is. We have the pictures of the players that are going to go into the graphics in the future. So I split this video into 3 parts, where I'm going to talk first about like introducing what I did, and then kind of give 3 tips on studio photography, specifically when it comes to really big groups. The second part of the video is actual shooting. So I got some footage on an iPhone, and also the GoPro strapped to my chest to give you like a POV perspective. That footage didn't come out that great because it was an older GoPro, so it's still like the housing part of the GoPro was dirty, and I just didn't realize that it was dirty, so it looks very smudgy. So I apologize for that in advance. And then the last part, I'm just going to show you kind of the quick edits I did in Lightroom. Not quick edits, but the edits that I did in Lightroom, because honestly there was such little editing because I was able to nail it so well on camera, which is great. So with that being said, let's move forward to 3 tips that I think are very important and things that I kept in mind going into the shoot, and I'm glad I did because it was very beneficial. So the tips I'm going to give you are going to be more just general and kind of how to manage being in a studio and how to, your workflow in the studio and all the stuff that matters when it comes to that. So the first tip is going to be planning, and that might be obvious, but what I mean by that is really planning out your entire shoot. Like the week or 2 weeks leading up into the shoot, I was already thinking about how I was going to shoot it, and how we were going to do it, and talking to my team about like how we were going to schedule it. And so the way we ended up scheduling the shoot is we scheduled and booked the studio for 3 hours, and that's because we shot an entire roster of 21 people and then some staff and coaches and stuff like that. So there ended up being like 25 people. We also did 2 jersey combos, and we also had multiple poses. So as you can imagine, there was a lot, and I think I ended up having like 350 images, which isn't that much, but when you have a little bit of time to complete it, there is a lot of people, a lot of poses, and some people weren't even there. So we booked it for 3 hours just to make sure it gave us enough time. And then when it came to the planning aspect of it, and this is something that's good to do for big groups, is you don't want everybody to get there at the same time. You don't want the studio to be too packed to where when you're just shooting individual portraits and there's a huge line of people waiting and it's just crazy and unorganized and noisy. You just want to avoid the mess, and it's always best to kind of just get people to get there at certain times. And so for the soccer team, we told the defenders to get there first at 10 a.m. Then 45 minutes later, an hour later, we told the midfielders to get there, and then the forwards after that, and then coaches and staff. And so this allows us to work individually with groups and not be too stressed about having too many people waiting. But it gave us the ability to kind of take rest between the groups and drink water, go to the bathroom, whatever it is. However, booking the studio was also important for 3 hours, even though I could have gotten this shoot probably done in like an hour and a half. And this is going to lead into my next point, which is always plan for the unexpected. And I think that's something I can't stress enough, and not just for studio shoots, but kind of just for shoots in general. Like I've been on so many shoots where we were supposed to be on a schedule and just none of that happens, and so we thought we had a great plan going forward, and we really did. What ended up happening is when the first group got there, the person who was supposed to bring the jerseys, for whatever reason, just couldn't make it on time. And so we ended up getting the jerseys for the players 45 minutes late. We ended up wasting that entire first hour. So again, this is when planning for the unexpected is important, because the reason we booked the studio for 3 hours was to just ensure that if anything does go wrong and if anyone's late or anything like that, we have the time to work within that extra hour that we gave ourselves, right? So that's tip number 2, is just always plan for the unexpected. And then at that point, you know, you just always have to be able to adapt. And, you know, for us, it was just patiently waiting for the jerseys to get there. And once the jerseys got there, it was go time, and then we shot. And then tip number 3, and this is gonna be probably the most obvious one, or probably the one that most studio photographers will tell you, but when you're the photographer and you're working in the studio, you're the director, you're the leader, you're the coach, you're the manager, especially when it comes to big groups like this. When it comes to big groups like this and like corporate groups or teams and stuff like that, the players always want to listen to their manager or their coach. Same thing with corporate, corporate shoots, the employees always want to listen to the people in charge who they see as leaders. However, when it's in the studio and you're the photographer and you're behind the camera, you're the one in charge, and you have to make sure you build that relationship early enough where when you start like seeing the people you're gonna photograph, you want to make sure you build a relationship with them, connect with them, and be like, hey, I'm the photographer today, how are you, you know, and make sure they respect you. And then that way, when they get in front of the camera and it's their turn, they're gonna listen to you, and they're gonna enjoy the time they have in front of the camera, specifically when they're not models. When they're athletes or people or just employees in a company and stuff like that, they don't know how to be in front of the camera and they're not always comfortable with it. So making sure that they respect you and they listen to your direction and your leadership is gonna ensure that you get the best possible product all the time. And that was something that I was happy that I was able to do in this shoot, working with a group of, you know, young men from a soccer team, you know, a huge group. It's not always easy, but I was able to direct them well and get a quality product, which I was happy with. So those are my 3 tips. And just to summarize, the first one is going to be plan a lot. Number 2 is going to be plan the unexpected. And then number 3 is going to be the director, be the leader, be the coach essentially of the situation, and have everybody respect you. And so moving forward, I'm going to just play some of the footage that I got from the actual day. And so this is all iPhone footage, and then at the end it's some GoPro footage strapped to the chest. So this first clip is pretty much, I mean, it's just super simple. This is the backdrops behind me and we're shooting on just a white wall essentially. And so I have one on my left-hand side, we have the one master light, and then or the key light, and then the other light to my right was my field light. And I had that set to half the intensity of the master light or of the key light. And that's just what worked well for us. The other thing is, since we were masking this, what I really liked about this light setup and using the white wall instead of opposed to like a black background or anything like that, is the shadows kind of just disappeared because the lighting was so good. And even though it was only a 2 light setup and we didn't have a light to fill the background, the shadows just kind of like, the light just reflected off the white wall super easily and just like blocked all the shadows, which I was super happy about. And then I just got more clips here, just some clips of me actually, you know, shooting the player, so you can kind of get an idea of everything. We did 2 jerseys, black and white jerseys. And what's good is I had my team there to help me, and they were super helpful in just like guiding the players and everything. And then also when you're kind of just moving in like a studio setting, is you want to make sure you're keeping the poses and everything consistent. That was like one thing, like at the shoot, everything for me was consistency. So I made sure the poses that we had were essentially 6 of the same style poses. So 3 were squared up looking at the camera, arms down, arms crossed, and then arms behind the back. Then I had them do a quarter turn and then do the same 3 poses and then a celebration. And I made sure every player understood that, even showing them physically what I meant. The other thing is, you're gonna see here is the language barrier. So I don't speak the best Spanish, and so some of these players only spoke Spanish. And so the struggle was sometimes trying to like describe what I meant by certain things. I just wanted him to like move towards me a little bit and then he turned around completely. But again, I think it's so important to be patient with who you're shooting, especially if they're not models, because they've never done something like this before. And so it's just super important to be able to guide them, and don't be afraid to kind of point at them or point at their feet or something and tell them to do something, and just be patient, because at the end of the day, if you rush it, you're not going to be happy with like the result. And so here's again some of the GoPro footage. I know it doesn't look great, but you still get the idea. This is one of the owners, and this is also just to keep in mind when you're shooting different people in an organization. For the owner, I know he's like all suited up, wearing nice shoes and everything, so I took some more close-ups. Then I stepped back, I got his entire body and everything. And then here, again, just shooting the players, just so you can get an idea. I kept them what was really good is I was using a 6D, a Canon 6D, so it was really good. The autofocus was awesome. I mean, super basic, but I just trusted the autofocus the whole time. I was just using autofocus, focusing on their face. The settings were the same across the board. If you're curious, my settings were ISO 100. I was at like f5.6. So then I just synced with the flashes at like 1/60th of a second. So it was super easy. And that's just what I did for the entire shoot. And again, I just had them run through the different poses, and it was quick, it was efficient. As you can see here, it's just like 1, 2, 3, like arms down. Okay, now arms behind your back. And I'm actually showing them while I'm doing it as well. And then I tell him to cross his arms, and I show him what I mean. And it was just very easy. And you know, once they get the idea, like on the second go around when they're in the white jerseys, they already understood what they were supposed to do, which was good. We're gonna just move on to the next part of the video where I'm actually gonna show you some of the edits I did and show you kind of the raw file and then the edited file. So then moving on to editing, I'll talk more about it when I get there. But I already edited these photos and I actually already have an example of a graphic we made using this, which is awesome. So I'll show you guys all of that. I show you the best ones I like, but then I'm gonna show you the raw image so you can kind of just see in camera like how close I already was to my final product and how happy I was with it. So let's move on to the editing. So here I am in Lightroom, and I already did edits to these photos. I did it earlier this week. So I'm just gonna show you guys some basic before and afters. And I didn't go too hard into the edits because again, these are really gonna be used for graphics. And you know, I'm gonna mask the background out and use them somewhere else. One of the first pictures I took on the day, and so this is the after, and then this is the before. So as you can see, so even in camera, it did look really good. I had my key light on this side, you know, lighting this side of the face, a little bit of shadow here. The fill light is filling this in a little bit, but then what this really allowed me to do was when I edited it, I legit just adjusted, increased the highlights, increased the shadows a little bit, brought down the blacks because I wanted the jersey to contrast a little bit more, brought down the whites, and I upped the vibrance and saturation just a little bit, and I left pretty much everything else alone. And that's kind of what I did for each one of these images. And you can see just the quality of light that came from the camera was awesome, and the background and the separation of the player off the background and everything I really like. And so here's just so you can see the example of the poses I did. I did ones with the arms down, one with the arms crossed. I went behind the back. I did quarter turn, arms crossed, quarter turn, arms down, quarter turn, arms behind the back, and then a celebration. And this was actually a candid because he was messing around like, oh, I'm never gonna score, and like, you know, just messing around with it, and I captured that. And just so you can see the example, like with the white jersey, this is where we are. Maybe you're gonna have a little bit of a problem. Masking this out, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult. However, it still shouldn't be a big deal as long as you're patient and like take your time with it. But then as you can see here, you know, with all the players, I did different edits. And here I didn't bring out the highlights that much. I brought down the shadows a little bit, brought down the blacks a little bit. So then let me actually show you guys before and after. So the side by side, here's before, here's after. So as you can see, I just brought up the highlights in his face a little bit on the side where the key light was. I pretty much kept the shadows more or less in the same spot on the other side of his face to kind of keep that dramatic like contrast. But again, it's not overly dramatic because we're not going to be using these posts or these photos for just overly dramatic posts all the time. So I wanted a good balance between dramatic but clean at the same time. And then I brought the saturation and vibrance up a little bit. Show you guys another example. You know, this one like looked really good out of camera. Very nice lighting, very nice shadows, very clean highlights. And I just brought everything up a little bit and I just accentuated it a little bit more. Brought some color out of their eyes as well. So here's an example of a mask that I did just messing around in Photoshop. And I did this super quick, and what I was really testing is to see how good the background works in order to pull the players off, and it worked flawlessly, and I was super happy. But here's an example of just like a background replacement. I'm gonna do a separate video on exactly how to do this because that's like another 10-minute video on its own. So I'm not gonna do that here, but I just wanted to show you guys that. And I'm gonna put on the screen right now a sample graphic that we already did. They already posted it using this same exact photo, just adding graphic design and text behind it and everything. So it's gonna be right here. Super happy with how it came out, and absolutely love the way the photo looks, especially with the graphic and everything. And that's shout out to our graphic designer Mike, who absolutely kills it on each project that he works on. but that's all him. So I'm gonna conclude the video here, guys. Thank you so much if you made it to the end for watching, and I hope you found it useful, especially if you're a studio photographer or a new studio photographer looking for tips and tricks on how to get better, or just styles that you can use or do in the studio. I hope you found this useful, and if you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know. Again, I'm not a professional studio photographer or anything crazy, but I do have some experience and I like doing stuff like this. And so please leave comments down below, like the video, subscribe, check out all the information in the description, my Instagram, jfernvisions, and my website as well will all be in the description. And hopefully I will see you guys in the next one. Create and repeat, guys. See you later.